For generations, the timeline of human history seemed permanently set in stone. The accepted academic baseline taught us that human civilization, marked by agriculture and monumental stone building, began roughly around 3500 BC in Egypt. We saw the rise of the Sumerians in Mesopotamia as the secondary pillar of this officially established academic origin story. These were the societies that officially dragged humanity out of the dark. The entire timeline rests on a single core assumption. Before this moment, humans lived as disorganized, nomadic hunter-gatherers, wandering the landscape and struggling to survive, right up until the spontaneous invention of farming allowed them to finally settle down. But over the last few decades, a series of recent archaeological discoveries have taken a sledgehammer to that timeline. The origin story taught for generations remains incomplete, leaving a massive vacuum in our understanding of who we are and how we got here. To see any anomaly that shatters the established timeline, you only need to look at Göbekli Tepe in southeastern Turkey. It was built at the very end of the last ice age, dated to 9600 BC. That makes it roughly 6,000 years older than Stonehenge, and 7,000 years older than the Great Pyramid of Giza. The site features perfectly carved T-shaped limestone pillars arranged in massive stone circles. These monoliths are intricately decorated with boss relief carvings of scorpions, foxes, boars, and vultures, and some of these pillars weigh up to 20 tons. Here's the paradox. Mainstream archaeology definitively confirms that this site was built by hunter-gatherers. These builders lacked metal tools, they lacked the wheel, and lacked agriculture. Yet they successfully managed the sheer logistics required to quarry, transport, and erect these monoliths, housing and feeding hundreds of workers in the process. The presence of complex, hierarchical engineering thousands of years before the invention of agriculture means our definition of primitive needs to be discarded. These prehistoric builders were apex predators who mastered their environment so completely they possessed surplus time to dedicate to monumental religious architecture. This flowchart illustrates the traditional anthropological model of civilization. It states that farming produced a food surplus, which allowed humans to settle into cities, which eventually gave them the free time to invent complex religion. The forgotten builders of Göbekli Tepe flipped the script entirely. It appears the overwhelming desire to gather for complex spiritual rituals came first. Bringing thousands of people together created a sudden, massive logistical nightmare: how to feed them. To sustain these huge religious gatherings, these people were forced to begin domesticating wild wheat. The human desire for spiritual congregation literally planted the first seeds of agriculture. Religion birthed farming, not the other way around. Between the end of the Ice Age and the rise of dynastic Egypt or Sumer, there is a vast gap of several millennia. During that massive blind spot, other highly complex, culturally sophisticated societies rose and faded away, leaving only tantalizing traces behind. In the Levant, you had the Natufians, living between 12,500 and 9,500 BC. They were technically still hunter-gatherers, but they became so successful at foraging wild cereals that they built some of the world's first permanent stone villages thousands of years before farming was officially invented. Jump forward to modern-day Turkey around 7100 BC, and you find the massive proto-city of Çatalhöyük. Up to 10,000 people lived here, densely packed. It was a highly egalitarian urban center with an alien layout. It had no streets. The houses were built tightly against each other like a honeycomb. Residents simply walked across the interconnected roofs and entered their homes directly through trapdoors. This means a sophisticated, deeply religious, and highly organized world was thriving in the shadows of prehistory, completely detached from the later empires we study in school. This forces a very difficult question. Where did these forgotten builders get their advanced knowledge of masonry and social organization? Around 10,800 BC, the Earth's climate violently and suddenly cooled. This was the Younger Dryas event, plunging the planet back into a harsh mini-ice age that lasted for 1,200 years. When that cold snap finally broke, it was followed by Meltwater Pulse 1b, a period of intense global warming that caused massive, rapid glacial melting. This map cross-section demonstrates the devastating result. The sheer volume of melted ice caused global sea levels to rise by up to 400 feet. This severe climate whipsaw effectively erased the geographic slate of the ancient world. The map of human existence was violently redrawn. Throughout history, humans have overwhelmingly settled in two places: flat coastlines and fertile river deltas. Because sea levels rose so aggressively at the end of the Ice Age, millions of square miles of prime, highly populated ancient coastal real estate are currently sitting in darkness at the bottom of the ocean. This fuels the survivor hypothesis. Many researchers argue that the builders of inland sites like Göbekli Tepe were fleeing a catastrophe. When the catastrophic floods consumed the coastlines, survivors of earlier, complex cultures were forced inland to higher ground in places like Turkey. They brought their advanced knowledge of engineering, art, and social structure with them, using it to start over. Human history moves through a cycle of dramatic peaks and valleys. These forgotten civilizations remind us that human ingenuity and our capacity for complex organization are far older than our history books allow.